25. David Berkowitz. Known as the son of Sam or the .44 caliber killer, David Berkowitz carried out a series of shootings in the summer of 1976. Using a .44 caliber bulldog revolver, he shot 6 people dead and wounded 7 others. Berkowitz sent a series of taunting letters to police and the press promising further shootings, terrorizing the people of New York City. Eventually captured in August 1977, Berkowitz confessed to all of the killings and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder, to be served consecutively, and is unlikely ever to be released. 24. Edmund Kemper. Known as the co-ed killer, Edmund Kemper is an American serial killer and necrophile who carried out a series of brutal murders in California. In the 1970s he murdered his grandparents when he was 15 years old, then later killed and dismembered 6 female hitchhikers in the Santa Cruz area. He then murdered his mother and one of her friends, before turning himself into police days later. He was found guilty in November 1973 of 8 counts of murder. He asked for the death penalty, but instead received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. 23. Larry Bittaker and Roy Norris. Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris, nicknamed the Toolbox Killers, are 2 American serial killers who together murdered 5 young women in California in 1979, luring victims into their van and driving them to secluded areas where they both raped and tortured them horrifically with a number of tools before murdering them. In 1981, Bittaker and Norris were charged with murder, kidnapping and rape. Bittaker was sentenced to death and remains on death row to this day. Update: Norris was spared execution in return for his testimony against Bittaker and sentenced to 45 years in prison. 22. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley killed 5 children between 1963 and 1965 in Greater Manchester, England. Aged between 10 and 17 years old, their victims were sexually assaulted before being brutally murdered. 3 of the victims were discovered in graves dug on Saddleworth Moor, and the last victim's body found at Brady's house. The whereabouts of the 4th victim, Keith Bennett, remains unknown. Both Brady and Hindley were later sentenced to life imprisonment, Hindley dying in prison in 2002. Brady has since been confined in the maximum security Ashworth Hospital, where he remains on hunger strike to this day. 21. Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono, the Hillside Stranglers. Between late 1977 to early 1978, cousins Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono carried out a reign of terror in California, kidnapping, raping, and killing 10 girls aged between 12 and 28 years old, strangling each victim in the hills above Los Angeles, which led to them being known as the Hillside Stranglers. Bianchi attempted to plead not guilty by way of insanity, but was found to be faking mental illness, so instead agreed to plead guilty and testify against Buono. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment. Buono died of a heart attack in his cell in 2002.